The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot of Riverside Mall in Jacksonville, Florida. The humidity hung thick in the air, the kind that made your shirt stick to your back within minutes of stepping outside. Palm trees swayed gently in the warm breeze coming off the St. Johns River, their fronds rustling like whispered secrets. The asphalt shimmered with heat waves, creating mirages that looked like puddles of water that disappeared when you got close. A family walked past, the father carrying a little girl on his shoulders while the mother pushed a stroller. They were laughing about something, some private joke that Marcus couldn't hear. He watched them disappear into the mall entrance and felt the familiar ache in his chest, the one that came whenever he saw intact families doing normal family things. Marcus Thompson sat on the concrete bench outside the food court entrance, his worn sneakers tapping nervously against the pavement. He had been sitting there for almost 10 minutes, working up the courage to go inside. It wasn't that he was afraid of the mall itself. It was what the mall represented: freedom, independence, a chance to be someone other than the kid who got picked on at school. At 14 years old, he was small for his age, with wire-rimmed glasses that kept sliding down his nose and a mop of curly black hair that his mother always said needed cutting. His backpack, patched in 3 places with duct tape, sat beside him like a loyal companion. The patches were his own handiwork, done late one night when he realized he couldn't ask his mother for a new bag. She was already working double shifts just to keep the lights on. His father had left when Marcus was 5, not dramatically with shouting and slamming doors, but quietly. One morning, the man who was supposed to protect him simply wasn't there anymore. A note on the kitchen table, a void that had never been filled. Marcus barely remembered his face now, just fragments, the smell of coffee, the sound of the morning news. A hand on his head that had felt like safety. He checked his phone again. 3:45. His mother's shift at the hospital didn't end until 6, and his little sister Destiny was at her friend's house until 5. That gave him just over an hour to himself, a rare luxury in a household where someone always needed something. Marcus had saved for 3 weeks for this moment, $12.37 earned from helping Mrs. Patterson next door with her garden and walking the Hendersons' hyperactive beagle. The beagle, named Rocket, had a habit of trying to chase every squirrel in the neighborhood, and Marcus had the sore arms to prove it. But Mrs. Henderson always paid him $5 per walk, and she never looked at him with pity, the way some of the other neighbors did. He had also earned $2 collecting cans from the recycling bins in the neighborhood. It wasn't glamorous work, and he made sure to do it early in the morning when no one from school might see him. The last thing he needed was more ammunition for the kids who already thought he was worthless. Today, he was going to buy himself an Oreo milkshake from Shake Palace, the best milkshake place in the whole mall, maybe even the whole city. He had been dreaming about this milkshake for weeks, ever since Sophie Chen from his science class had mentioned how amazing they were. Sophie, with her bright eyes and quick laugh, who actually talked to him like he was a person and not a target. He pushed through the glass doors into the air-conditioned relief of the mall interior. The cool air hit his skin like a blessing, and he felt the tension in his shoulders ease just slightly. The food court buzzed with the usual afternoon crowd, mostly teenagers killing time, young mothers with strollers, and elderly couples sharing meals and memories. The smell of fast food mixed together into something that shouldn't have been appetizing, but somehow was. Pizza and Chinese food and burgers and fried chicken, all competing for attention. A group of girls from the high school walked past, laughing at something on one of their phones. They didn't even glance at Marcus. He was used to being invisible. In some ways, invisible was better than the alternative. Shake Palace occupied a corner spot near the fountain, its neon sign glowing a cheerful pink and blue. The menu board displayed pictures of milkshakes so perfect they looked fake. Cookies and cream, strawberry cheesecake, peanut butter chocolate, and there, right in the center, the Oreo shake that had been haunting his dreams. Marcus approached the counter, his heart beating a little faster with anticipation. The girl behind the register looked about 17, with bright purple streaks in her blonde hair and a name tag that read Destiny. Marcus smiled at the coincidence, thinking of his sister. His Destiny was only 9, but she had the same kind of energy, the same brightness that made people want to be around her. "Hey there, what can I get you?" she asked, her voice friendly. She had a nose ring and 3 earrings in each ear, and she looked at Marcus like he was a regular customer, not a nervous kid about to spend his life savings on sugar and dairy. One medium Oreo milkshake, please," Marcus said, already pulling the crumpled bills from his pocket. His hands were slightly sweaty, and he hoped she wouldn't notice. "Great choice. That's my favorite, too. That'll be $5.99. He counted out the money carefully, making sure to leave enough for the bus fare home. The girl handed him a plastic number tent. "It'll be ready in about 5 minutes. We'll call your number." Marcus found a small table near the window, one with a view of the indoor fountain, where coins sparkled beneath the rippling water. He set the number tent in front of him and waited, watching the water dance and thinking about how good that milkshake was going to taste. He didn't notice the group of boys approaching until a shadow fell across his table. A large shadow. The kind of shadow that blocked out the fluorescent lights and made the temperature drop several degrees. Well, well, well. Look who's here all by himself. Marcus's stomach dropped. He knew that voice. Everyone at Jefferson Middle School knew that voice. It was the voice that haunted his nightmares. The voice that made him take the long way to every class. The voice that had made him fake being sick more times than he could count. Derek Lawson stood 6 feet tall at 16, having been held back twice. His Letterman jacket, earned more through intimidation than actual athletic achievement, stretched across shoulders that seemed impossibly wide. His face had the kind of permanent sneer that suggested he had never been told no in his entire life. Flanking him were his 2 constant companions, Tyler and Brett, both equally large and equally mean. They were like a pack of wolves, and Derek was the alpha. Tyler was the dumber of the 2, a boy who communicated mostly in grunts and laughed at things that weren't funny. Brett was smarter, which made him more dangerous. He knew exactly what he was doing when he participated in Derek's cruelty. "Hey, Derek," Marcus said quietly, hoping against hope that acknowledging him might somehow make him go away. It never worked, but hope was sometimes all you had. Hope and the knowledge that eventually the day would end, and he could go home and pretend none of this existed. "What are you doing here, Thompson? This is our spot." Marcus looked around at the very public food court. There were at least 50 people within earshot, security cameras on every pillar. This should have been safe. But nothing was safe when Derek Lawson decided you were his entertainment. "I'm just waiting for my order. I'll be gone in a few minutes." Derek slid into the chair across from Marcus, his bulk making the plastic seat creak in protest. Tyler and Brett took positions on either side, boxing Marcus in completely. There was no escape now. There never was. "See, here's the thing," Derek said, leaning forward. His breath smelled like energy drinks and entitlement. "I don't think I want you here for a few minutes. I don't think I want you here at all. I'm not bothering anyone. You're bothering me. Your whole existence bothers me, Thompson. You know that? Every time I see your stupid face, I get annoyed. Every time I hear your voice in class, answering questions like you think you're better than everyone else, we'd want to throw up." Marcus felt his cheeks flush with the familiar heat of humiliation. He'd been Derek's favorite target since 6th grade, when Marcus had made the mistake of answering a question in class that Derek couldn't answer. It had been a simple question about the American Revolution, and Marcus had raised his hand without thinking. 3 years of torment for one raised hand. 3 years of hiding and running and praying for invisibility. "Number 47, medium Oreo shake." Marcus started to stand, but Derek's hand shot out and pushed him back down. The force of it rattled Marcus's teeth. "Brett, go get the man's milkshake." "Derek, please, I paid for that myself. I saved up for weeks." Something flickered in Derek's eyes at that, something that might have been amusement. or might have been cruelty. With Derek, it was usually both. Brett returned with the milkshake, the cup sweating with condensation, Oreo pieces visible through the clear plastic. He set it down in front of Derek, not Marcus. 3 weeks, huh? Derek said, picking up the shake and examining it like a scientist studying a specimen. That's a long time to save for something this small. Please, Derek, just let me have it and I'll go. I won't come back here, I promise. Derek smiled, and it was the smile of a cat that had cornered a mouse. You know what, Thompson? I believe you. I really do. For one heart-stopping moment, Marcus thought Derek might actually hand him the milkshake. That maybe, just maybe, there was some humanity lurking beneath all that meanness. Then Derek stood up, positioned himself directly in front of Marcus, and upended the entire cup over his head. The cold hit first, shocking and absolute. Then came the wet, the sticky, the humiliating sensation of chocolate and Oreo cookie pieces sliding down his face, into his shirt, dripping from his glasses. Marcus sat frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe, as laughter erupted around him. Not just from Derek and his friends, from other tables too. Phones came out, filming, capturing his humiliation for eternal replay. That's a good look for you, Thompson, Derek howled, doubling over with laughter. Really brings out your eyes. Marcus felt the tears coming and fought them with everything he had. Not here, not now. He wouldn't give them that satisfaction. He reached up slowly and removed his glasses, wiping them on the only dry spot he could find on his shirt. Through his blurred vision, he could see the crowd that had gathered, the pointing fingers, the glowing phone screens. He could hear the laughter, not just from Derek and his friends, but from strangers who had decided his pain was entertainment. A little kid at a nearby table was pointing and asking his mother what happened. The mother hushed him but didn't intervene. No one intervened. That was the thing about public humiliation. Everyone watched. No one helped. Marcus thought about his mother, working her double shift at the hospital, dealing with real emergencies, real pain. He thought about how disappointed she would be if she saw him like this. Not disappointed in him, but disappointed in the world, in the cruelty that seemed to find her son no matter where he went. He thought about his sister Destiny, who looked up to him, who thought he was the smartest person in the world. What would she think if she saw this video? Because there would be a video. There were always videos now. Every moment of weakness captured forever. This was it. This was rock bottom. This was the worst moment of his life. 14 years old, covered in chocolate milkshake, surrounded by laughing strangers, and completely, utterly alone. And then a voice cut through the laughter like a knife through butter. That's enough. The voice wasn't loud, but it carried an authority that made everyone stop. Marcus squinted toward the sound, trying to make out the speaker through his smeared lenses. A man stepped forward from the crowd. He looked to be in his early 30s, with a military short haircut and a build that suggested hours in the gym weren't optional. He wore simple clothes, jeans and a plain grey t-shirt, but something about the way he carried himself commanded attention. There was an economy to his movements, a precision that suggested everything he did was intentional. His face was weathered, lined with the kind of experience that doesn't come from sitting behind a desk. There was a small scar above his left eyebrow and another on his jaw, barely visible unless you were looking for it. But it was his eyes that caught Marcus's attention most. They scanned the scene with a calm assessment that somehow made Derek and his friends seem small. Derek turned, his smile faltering for just a moment before recovering. He wasn't used to being challenged. His father's position on the city council had always protected him, had always made consequences, something that happened to other people. Mind your own business, old man. This doesn't concern you. The man stopped about 6 feet away from Derek, his hands relaxed at his sides. His eyes, Marcus noticed, even through his blurred vision, were the pale blue of winter ice, cold, watchful, dangerous. I'm making it my business. The kids had enough. Yeah? And what are you going to do about it? The man didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't even blink. There was something almost supernatural about his stillness, though Marcus would later realize there was nothing supernatural about it at all. It was training, discipline, the kind of control that comes from years of operating in situations where the slightest mistake could mean death. I'm going to give you one chance to apologize to this young man, help him clean up and walk away. That's what I'm going to do. Derek looked at Tyler and Brett, then back at the stranger. He laughed, but there was an edge of uncertainty in it now. Do you know who my dad is? I don't care who your dad is. He's city council. He'll have you arrested for threatening a minor. The man's expression didn't change. I haven't threatened anyone. I've simply told you what I expect you to do. There's a difference. Derek's face reddened. Being challenged wasn't something he was used to. Being challenged in public with phones recording was intolerable. Tyler, Brett, teach this guy some manners. The two boys stepped forward, puffing out their chests, clearly expecting the stranger to back down. He didn't. He didn't even seem concerned. He just watched them approach with the same calm assessment he had shown since he stepped forward. Tyler was the bigger of the two, a football player who relied on his size to intimidate. Brett was faster, more athletic, the kind of kid who had been in fights before and won them. Together they outweighed the stranger by at least 100 pounds. It didn't matter. What happened next took approximately 4 seconds. Tyler swung first, a wide, telegraphed punch that the man simply wasn't there to receive. He had shifted, moved, flowed like water around the attack. His hand came up, not to strike, but to guide Tyler's momentum past him and into Brett, who was trying to circle around. The two boys collided and went down in a tangle of limbs. Tyler's elbow caught Brett in the nose. Brett's knee caught Tyler somewhere sensitive. They lay on the floor, groaning, trying to figure out what had happened. The stranger hadn't thrown a single punch. He hadn't needed to. The crowd had gone completely silent. The phones that had been recording Marcus's humiliation were now capturing something very different. Derek Lawson, big bad Derek Lawson, looking absolutely terrified. Derek stared, his mouth hanging open, his hands were shaking, and for the first time in his life, he looked like what he actually was. A scared 16-year-old kid who had just encountered something he couldn't intimidate or buy off. The man turned those ice-blue eyes on him. That was your one chance. Now sit down. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a command, delivered with the quiet confidence of someone who was used to being obeyed. Derek's legs seemed to fold under him of their own accord, and he dropped into the nearest chair like a puppet whose strings had been cut. The man turned away from Derek entirely, dismissing him as a threat, and walked over to Marcus. He crouched down to eye level, and his voice, when he spoke, was gentle. "You okay, son?" Marcus nodded, though he wasn't sure if he was or not. "Come on, let's get you cleaned up." He helped Marcus to his feet and guided him toward the restrooms, one hand resting lightly on his shoulder. As they walked, Marcus heard a security guard finally arriving, asking questions, Derek's voice rising in complaint. The man pushed open the restroom door and led Marcus to the sink. The bathroom was empty, thankfully. Marcus didn't think he could handle another audience right now. "Here, let's get the worst of it off." He grabbed paper towels from the dispenser and ran them under warm water, handing them to Marcus. Then he stood by the door, giving Marcus space but staying close enough to offer help if needed. It was a small gesture, but Marcus noticed it, the way James positioned himself so that no one could come in without warning. The way he kept half his attention on the door, even while talking. Marcus cleaned his face first, then his glasses, then tried to do something about his shirt. It was hopeless. The chocolate had soaked through to his skin. He could feel it drying, getting sticky, becoming something that would be almost impossible to wash out. "That shirt's probably done," James observed quietly. "You got another one?" Marcus shook his head. "This is it. I didn't bring a change of clothes to the mall." "Fair enough. We'll figure something out." "I'm James," the man said after a moment. "James Mitchell. Marcus Thompson. Nice to meet you, Marcus." "I'm sorry it's under these circumstances." Marcus shrugged, a gesture he'd perfected over years of trying to pretend things didn't hurt. He had become an expert at minimizing, at making himself small, at pretending that the constant harassment was just normal teenage stuff. It's not the first time, won't be the last. James was quiet for a moment, studying Marcus's reflection in the mirror. How long has that kid been bothering you? Derek? 3 years, I guess, since 6th grade. 3 years. James shook his head slowly. That's a long time to carry that weight. It's just how things are. No, it's how things have been. There's a difference. Marcus looked up at him, really looked for the first time. There was something in James's eyes, something that went beyond the obvious physical capability. It was pain, old pain, carefully managed but never quite forgotten. It was the look of someone who had seen things, done things, survived things that Marcus couldn't even imagine. Were you in the military? Marcus asked. James nodded. Navy. 20 years. Like a regular sailor. A small smile crossed James's face. Something like that. Listen, Marcus, I know we just met, and I know you probably have about 100 reasons not to trust adults right now, but I want you to know something. He paused, making sure Marcus was listening. What happened out there, that wasn't your fault. Not one bit of it. That boy, Derek, he's got something broken inside him. People like that, they only feel big when they're making others feel small. It has nothing to do with you. It feels like it has everything to do with me. I know, but feelings aren't facts. Remember that. The restroom door opened, and a security guard poked his head in. Sir, we need to take statements about what happened. James nodded. We'll be right out. He looked back at Marcus. You good? Marcus nodded, though he still felt like a chocolate-covered mess, both inside and out. They walked back out to the food court together. The scene had changed dramatically. Derek was sitting at a table with 2 security guards, his father standing over him, red-faced and gesturing wildly. Tyler and Brett were with another guard, looking considerably less confident than they had 20 minutes ago. A woman in a mall management suit approached James. Sir, I'm Patricia Gomez, mall security supervisor. I've reviewed the footage from our cameras and spoken with witnesses. It's clear that those boys were the aggressors and that you acted in defense of this young man. Thank you. However, Mr. Lawson, the father, is quite insistent that you assaulted his son's friends. James's expression didn't change. I redirected 2 attacks without throwing a single punch. If that's assault, then I suppose I'm guilty. Patricia Gomez smiled slightly. Between you and me, I've wanted to redirect that kid for years. His father's been using his city council position to get him out of trouble since he was 12. I have a detailed incident report here that clearly shows self-defense. I'll need your contact information for our records, but you're free to go. And Marcus. The young man is welcome to stay or go as he pleases. And Marcus, she turned to him directly, I'm going to make sure Shake Palace gives you a replacement milkshake on the house. Several of them, actually. Marcus managed a small smile. Thank you. As Patricia walked away to deal with the Lawsons, James turned to Marcus. You have a way home? Bus. My mom's at work until 6. Where does she work? Baptist Medical Center. She's a nurse in the ER. Something shifted in James's expression. Lisa Thompson. Marcus blinked. You know my mom? James laughed, and it transformed his face, softening the hard edges. She was my nurse when I came back from my last deployment. Took care of me for 3 weeks. Small world. Marcus didn't know what to say to that. His mother didn't talk much about work, about the patients she treated. She came home tired and sometimes sad, and Marcus had learned not to ask too many questions. Listen, James said. I'm between jobs at the moment. Got time on my hands. How about I give you a ride home? I'd like to say hello to your mom anyway. Under normal circumstances, Marcus would have declined. Getting in cars with strangers was literally the first thing his mother had taught him not to do. But something about James Mitchell felt different. Safe. Okay, but she's not home until 6. Then we'll wait. I don't have anywhere else to be. They walked out of the mall into the humid Florida afternoon. The parking lot was half empty, heat shimmering off the asphalt in waves. James led him to a modest silver pickup truck with a veteran's license plate. "Sorry about the mess," James said as he unlocked the doors. "Been living out of this thing for a few weeks." Marcus climbed in and noticed the signs of temporary habitation. A sleeping bag rolled up in the back seat, a cooler, a duffel bag, a folded American flag. "Are you homeless?" Marcus asked, then immediately felt bad for asking. James started the engine and pulled out of the parking spot before answering. The truck made a slight rattling sound, like something was loose under the hood, but James didn't seem concerned about it. "Temporarily displaced, there's a difference." "Sorry, I didn't mean—" "It's okay. You asked an honest question. I'll give you an honest answer." He merged onto the main road, heading toward Marcus's neighborhood. The traffic was light, just the usual afternoon flow of people going about their lives, unaware of the drama that had just unfolded in the mall food court. "I got out of the Navy 6 months ago, 20 years of service, and suddenly I'm a civilian again. It's an adjustment. 20 years is a long time. Half my life, more than half really. I enlisted at 18 the day after I graduated high school. The Navy was all I knew, all I was." "What did you do in the Navy?" James was quiet for a moment. He checked his mirrors, changed lanes, all the normal driving things, but Marcus could tell he was thinking about how to answer. "You ever heard of the SEALs?" Marcus's eyes went wide. "Like the Special Forces guys, the ones who got Bin Laden." "That's them. I was one of them. For 15 years. Marcus stared at James with new eyes. This unassuming man in a grey t-shirt, driving an old pickup truck, had been one of the most elite warriors in the world. He had done things that Marcus had only seen in movies. He had been places, seen things that most people couldn't even imagine. "That's so cool." James smiled, but it was tinged with something like sadness. The expression of someone who had earned his knowledge the hard way. It was many things. Cool wasn't always one of them. Mostly it was hard. Hard work, hard choices, hard goodbyes. You learn to live with constant pressure, constant danger. And then suddenly, it's over. You're out, and you realize you don't know how to live any other way. They drove in silence for a few minutes, the radio playing quietly in the background, an old country song about coming home. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said finally. "Shoot. If you were a Navy SEAL, why are you living in your truck? Wouldn't the government help you?" James exhaled slowly. "There's a lot of programs out there for veterans, good ones too. But sometimes, when you've spent 20 years living a certain way, it's hard to ask for help, hard to admit you need it. But you helped me. You didn't even hesitate. That's different." "How?" James glanced over at him, and Marcus saw something shift in those ice-blue eyes. "I guess I'm better at giving help than receiving it." Marcus thought about that. He thought about his mother, who worked double shifts to keep a roof over their heads, but wouldn't let Mrs. Patterson pay her back for the groceries she'd bought when the Pattersons were short on cash. He thought about his father, who had left when Marcus was 5 and never looked back, too proud to admit he couldn't handle the pressure of a family. "My mom's the same way," he said quietly. James nodded slowly. "Yeah, I remember." They pulled into Marcus's neighborhood, a collection of small, well-kept houses with chain-link fences and above-ground pools. It wasn't fancy, but it was home. "That's us," Marcus said, pointing to a yellow house with a small garden out front. "The one with the roses." James parked at the curb and cut the engine. "Your mom planted those?" "She says they help her decompress after shifts. She talks to them sometimes." James smiled. "Sounds like her." They got out of the truck and walked up the short driveway. Marcus pulled out his key and let them in. The house was small but clean, with photographs covering every available surface. Marcus at various ages, his little sister Destiny, their grandmother who had passed 2 years ago, their mother Lisa in her nursing scrubs, looking tired but proud. "Make yourself at home," Marcus said. "I'm going to go change out of this shirt. Take your time." Marcus headed upstairs to his room, peeling off the ruined shirt as he went. He grabbed a clean one from his closet, a simple blue t-shirt that had been his father's once upon a time. He didn't know why he still kept it. Some things were hard to let go of, even when they represented people who had let go of you. When he came back downstairs, James was standing in front of the photograph wall, studying the images. "She kept the same haircut," he said without turning around. "She says it's practical." James nodded. "It suits her." He turned away from the photographs and looked around the small living room. His eyes landed on a shelf full of trophies and ribbons. "Those yours?" Marcus shrugged. "Science fairs and stuff. Not a big deal." James picked up one of the trophies, reading the inscription. "First place, Regional Science Olympiad. That's not a small achievement, Marcus. It doesn't matter at school. Being smart just makes you a bigger target." James set the trophy down carefully. "Can I tell you something? Something I wish someone had told me when I was your age?" Marcus sat down on the couch. "Sure." James took a seat in the armchair across from him, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "I wasn't always like this. Strong, I mean, capable. When I was 14, I was the smallest kid in my class. Skinny, bad at sports, head always in a book. Sound familiar?" Marcus nodded slowly. "I got bullied every day. Every single day. There was this kid, Tommy Barkley, who made my life a living nightmare. I used to pray for rain because it meant indoor recess, and indoor recess meant I could hide in the library. What happened? I got older. I got stronger. I joined the Navy the day after I graduated high school, and I never looked back. I trained harder than anyone else because I had something to prove, not to Tommy Barkley, to myself. Did you ever see him again? Tommy?" James was quiet for a moment. "I did, actually. About 5 years ago. I was home on leave, stopped at a gas station, and there he was, working the register. He didn't recognize me at first. I had about 50 pounds more muscle and a lot less fear. What did you do?" "I bought my gas, said hello, and left." Marcus frowned. "That's it. That's it. Because here's the thing, Marcus. By then, Tommy Barkley didn't matter anymore. He was just a guy working at a gas station, living a small life in a small town. And I had seen the world. I had done things he couldn't even imagine. The best revenge isn't violence. It's becoming someone that your bullies could never become." Marcus let that sink in. It wasn't the answer he had expected, but somehow it felt more satisfying than any revenge fantasy he'd ever had. "But you still stopped Derek today." "I did. Because sometimes you need someone to step in. Sometimes you need to know that there are people in the world who won't just stand by and watch." James leaned back in the chair. "I didn't have that person when I was your age. I wanted to be that person for you." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, casting warm rectangles of light on the carpet. Outside, a dog barked. A car passed. Normal sounds of a normal neighborhood. "Can I ask you something else?" Marcus said. "Of course. Why are you really homeless? I mean, you seem like you have it together." James was quiet for a long moment. "I was married," he said finally. "For 12 years. Her name was Sarah. She was a teacher, 2nd grade." Marcus noticed the past tense. "We tried to make it work. 20 years of deployments, of missed birthdays and anniversaries, of phone calls at 3 in the morning that meant I was leaving again. She held on for a long time, longer than I had any right to ask. What happened? She met someone else. Someone who was actually there, and I couldn't blame her. Not really. How do you compete with a guy who comes home every night for dinner?" "I'm sorry." James shrugged, but Marcus could see the weight of it in his shoulders. "We finalized the divorce 4 months ago. She kept the house. I said she could. I didn't want it without her there." He looked around the small living room. "I've been drifting since, taking odd jobs, trying to figure out who I am when I'm not a SEAL anymore. That sounds lonely." "It is, but sometimes loneliness is just the space between who you were and who you're going to become." The front door opened, and a small whirlwind of energy burst into the house. That was destiny in a nutshell, a whirlwind. She had been born that way, their mother always said. She had come out screaming and hadn't stopped making noise since. "Marcus!" Mrs. Chen said I could stay an extra hour, but then I got bored because they were watching a baby show, and I'm not a baby. So I walked home, but it's okay because it's only 2 blocks, and I looked both ways at every street, and I didn't talk to any strangers except Mr. Henderson, who's not really a stranger because he lives next door, and Destiny stopped mid-sentence, noticing the stranger in the living room. Her eyes went wide, and for possibly the first time in her life, she was speechless, but only for about 3 seconds. Who's that? Destiny, this is James. He's a friend. James stood and offered his hand with exaggerated formality. It was a simple gesture, but Marcus noticed how Destiny's posture changed. She straightened up, responded to being treated like a person instead of just a kid. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Miss Destiny." Destiny giggled and shook his hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong for a 9-year-old. She had been doing gymnastics since she was 5 and had the muscle tone to prove it. "You talk funny, like you're in a movie or something. I've been told that before. Why are you here?" "He helped me with something," Marcus said quickly. "And he knows Mom from work." Destiny's eyes narrowed with the suspicion of a 9-year-old who knew when she wasn't getting the full story. She was smarter than people gave her credit for. Marcus sometimes forgot that. "What kind of something?" "Nothing important." "Then why are you wearing Dad's shirt?" Marcus felt his cheeks flush. He never wore his father's shirt. Destiny knew that. Everyone in the house knew that. The shirt had been in the back of his closet for years, untouched, unworn, a reminder of someone who wasn't there. Just felt like it. Destiny looked from Marcus to James and back again, clearly unconvinced but willing to let it go. "I'm hungry," she announced. "Can we have mac and cheese? Mom will be home in an hour. She'll make dinner. But I'm hungry now." James cleared his throat. "I make a pretty decent mac and cheese if you've got the ingredients." Both siblings stared at him. "You cook?" Marcus asked. "I had to learn. Deployed for months at a time with limited meal options. You develop skills." Destiny's face lit up. "You were deployed? Like in the army? Navy? Cool. Did you shoot people?" "Destiny," Marcus said sharply. "What? I'm just asking." James smiled. "It's okay. I did a lot of things, but mostly I helped people. That was the most important part of the job." Destiny seemed satisfied with that answer. "Okay, mac and cheese, please, with the little bacon bits if we have them." They moved to the kitchen, and Marcus watched as James navigated the small space with surprising ease. He found the pots, the ingredients and the spices without asking, moving with a quiet efficiency that spoke to years of making do with whatever was at hand. Within 20 minutes, the smell of homemade mac and cheese filled the house. Not the boxed kind that Marcus usually made, but actual cheese sauce, rich and golden and flecked with herbs. "This is really good," Destiny said through a mouthful. "Better than Mom's." "Don't tell her that," Marcus warned. The front door opened again, and this time the footsteps were tired, heavy, the steps of someone who had been on their feet for 12 hours. "Marcus? Destiny? Whose truck is that out front?" Lisa Thompson appeared in the kitchen doorway, still in her scrubs, her hair escaping from its practical ponytail. She looked exhausted, but her eyes sharpened the moment she saw James. "James Mitchell?" James stood from the table, suddenly looking almost nervous. "Hello, Lisa. It's been a while." 4 years. You look different." "Good different or bad different?" Lisa's tired face broke into a genuine smile. "Good. Definitely good." She looked at the scene before her, her son and daughter eating homemade mac and cheese with a man she had last seen in a hospital bed, recovering from injuries she had never asked about. "What are you doing in my kitchen?" "It's a long story," Marcus said. "I've got time." She sat down at the table, accepting the bowl that James handed her without comment. "Start talking." So Marcus talked. He told her about the mall, about Derek, about the milkshake and the humiliation and the phones recording everything. He told her about James appearing, about the confrontation, about the ride home. Lisa's face went through several changes as she listened. Anger, fear, relief, gratitude. When Marcus finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Derek Lawson," she said finally. His father brought him into the ER last month, fractured hand. Said he got it playing basketball. Let me guess, James said. The X-ray told a different story? Punching something hard and stationary. A wall, most likely. That boy has problems. He has more than problems now. I don't think he'll be bothering Marcus again. Lisa looked at James, really looked at him for the first time since she'd entered the kitchen. You're living in your truck. It wasn't a question. Temporarily. James, I'm working on it. Lisa shook her head slowly. You treated a bullet wound with superglue and a prayer, but you can't ask for help finding a place to stay. That was a classified bullet wound. That was a stupid bullet wound, is what it was. But she was smiling as she said it. How long have you been in Jacksonville? 3 weeks. 3 weeks. You've been 3 weeks in my city, living in your truck, and you didn't think to look me up. James shifted uncomfortably. You had your own life. I didn't want to intrude. James Mitchell, you saved my life in that hospital. Marcus looked up sharply. What? Lisa glanced at him, then back at James. I never told you, did I? About the patient who coded? No. It was a bad night. One of my patients, a young man about James's age, stopped breathing. I was alone in the room. I panicked, hit the code button, but nobody came right away. The crash team was dealing with 3 other emergencies. The floor was short-staffed. Everything that could go wrong was going wrong. She paused, and Marcus could see the memory playing behind her eyes. I froze. I just stood there, watching this man turn blue, and I couldn't remember what I was supposed to do. 3 years of nursing school, 5 years of experience, and my mind went completely blank. What happened? James got out of his bed, on legs that hadn't supported weight in 2 weeks, legs that the doctors said might never work properly again. He walked to the other bed and started CPR. By the time the crash team arrived, he'd kept the patient alive. She looked at James with something like wonder. The way you look at someone who has done something impossible and made it look easy. The doctors couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe you were even standing, let alone doing chest compressions. You collapsed after. We had to put you back in your own bed with a lecture about staying put. The head nurse wanted to have you restrained. James actually smiled at that. I remember. She was very stern. She was worried about you. We all were. He was dying. Staying put wasn't an option. That's who you are, Lisa said softly. That's who you've always been. Someone who can't stay put when other people need help. She reached across the table and put her hand on his. Let someone help you now. Please, you've spent 20 years taking care of other people. Let someone take care of you for a change. The kitchen was very quiet. Destiny had stopped eating, her 9-year-old brain clearly trying to process the weight of the adult conversation happening around her. We have a garage, she announced suddenly. It's got a room attached, where Dad used to keep his stuff. Lisa flinched slightly at the mention of her ex-husband, but she recovered quickly. She's right. It's not much. Just a converted space with a bed and a small bathroom. I've been using it for storage, but we could clear it out. James shook his head. I can't accept that. Why not? Because I'm a stranger. You're the man who saved my patient's life. The man who saved my son from a bully. You're not a stranger, James. You're family. The word hung in the air, heavy with meaning. James looked at Lisa, then at Marcus, then at Destiny, who was nodding enthusiastically. I like him, Destiny said. He makes good mac and cheese, and he doesn't talk to us like we're babies. That's a high compliment, Marcus added. She thinks everyone talks to her like a baby. James laughed, and this time it reached his eyes. Okay, on one condition. Name it. I pay rent. I help around the house. I'm not a charity case. Lisa nodded slowly. Deal, but I'm setting the rent, and it's going to be low enough that you can actually save some money. Lisa, not negotiable. Take it or leave it. James looked at the 3 faces watching him expectantly, at the small kitchen with its mismatched chairs and second-hand appliances, at the photograph on the refrigerator of Marcus and Destiny at some school event, Lisa standing behind them with her arms around both. "I'll take it," Destiny cheered. Marcus felt something loosen in his chest, something that had been tight for a long time. And James Mitchell, former Navy SEAL, temporarily displaced, found himself with something he hadn't had in years: a home. The next few weeks passed in a blur of change. James moved into the converted garage, which turned out to be more spacious than it had looked. He painted the walls a fresh white, fixed the leaky faucet, and installed a window unit air conditioner that actually worked. He fell into a routine with the Thompson family, up at 5 for a run, breakfast with the kids before school, odd jobs during the day while Lisa worked, dinner together every night. For Marcus, having James around was like having the father he'd never really had. Not that James tried to replace his biological father. He never overstepped, never forced anything. He was just there, present, available. They talked about school, about books, about life. James told stories from his Navy days, carefully edited for young ears, but still exciting. He taught Marcus basic self-defense moves, not because he expected Marcus to fight, but because he wanted him to feel capable. "It's not about being able to hurt someone," James explained during one of their sessions in the backyard. "It's about knowing you have options. Confidence changes how you carry yourself, and how you carry yourself changes how people see you. Derek hasn't bothered me since that day at the mall. He won't. Bullies are fundamentally cowards. They target people they think won't fight back. You're not that person anymore. Because of what you taught me, because of what you've always been. You just didn't know it yet." Marcus thought about that a lot. The idea that he had always been strong, just hidden, like a seed waiting for the right conditions to grow. Meanwhile, James was growing too. Lisa had connections at the VA hospital and helped him navigate the bureaucracy of veterans' benefits. He started seeing a therapist, something he had resisted for years but now accepted as necessary. "She's a civilian," he said one evening, sitting on the back porch with Lisa while the kids did homework inside. "She doesn't understand what it was like over there. Does she try?" "Yeah, she does." "Then that's enough. She doesn't need to understand everything. She just needs to help you process it." James was quiet for a moment. Sarah never asked about the missions, never wanted to know. Maybe that was easier for her. Maybe. But it made me feel like I was living two separate lives. The one at home and the one in the field. I could never figure out how to make them fit together. Lisa nodded slowly. "I felt that way when Michael left. Like I had been playing a role and suddenly the script was gone. How did you handle it?" "I didn't at first. I cried a lot. I ate too much ice cream. I let the kids stay up past their bedtime because I didn't have the energy to fight about it." She smiled at the memory. "But then I woke up one day and realized that the life I was mourning wasn't really the life I had been living. It was the life I thought I was supposed to have. Once I let go of that, everything got easier." "You're a wise woman, Lisa Thompson." "I'm a tired woman who's made a lot of mistakes, but I've learned from them." James looked at her, at the faint lines around her eyes, at the grey just starting to appear at her temples. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with youth and everything to do with character. "I'm glad I ended up here," he said quietly. "In Jacksonville? In this house? With your family?" Lisa's hand found his in the darkness. "I'm glad too." Across town, in a mansion that overlooked the St. Johns River, Derek Lawson was not having a good summer. His father had grounded him for a month after the mall incident. Not because Richard Lawson cared about bullying, he cared about appearances. The video of Derek dumping a milkshake on a kid had gone viral, and the optics were devastating for someone with political ambitions. "Do you have any idea what this has done to my campaign?" Richard had shouted that night, his face purple with rage. "I'm running for state senate, and now everyone thinks my son is a thug. He was just some loser kid. I don't care who he was. I care that you were stupid enough to do it where there were cameras." Derek had expected his father to be angry about the fight, about being embarrassed, about the cost of lawyers and damage control. He had not expected the next part. You're going to apologize. What? You heard me. You're going to write a letter of apology to that boy and his family. You're going to do community service, and you're going to do it with a smile on your face, because that's what the voters want to see. That's non-negotiable. You've put me in this position, and you're going to get me out of it. End of discussion. Derek had written the letter under his father's supervision. Every word chosen for maximum political impact. Every sentiment carefully crafted to sound sincere without admitting any real guilt. But the letter never got sent, because while Derek was composing hollow apologies, his mother was in the next room, listening through the wall, and something in her broke. Patricia Lawson had been Mrs. Richard Lawson for 18 years. She had played the role perfectly, the supportive wife, the elegant hostess, the devoted mother who overlooked her son's cruelty because her husband made excuses for it. But watching that video, seeing her son pour a milkshake on a boy who couldn't fight back, seeing the laughter and the cruelty and the absolute absence of empathy, she saw something she had refused to see for years. Her son was becoming her husband. She waited until Richard left for a late meeting that would almost certainly involve his 23-year-old assistant. She sat Derek down in the living room and turned off his phone. "Mom, what are you—" "Quiet. I'm going to talk, and you're going to listen." Derek had never heard his mother use that tone. It was the tone of someone who had finally reached her limit. "I've made a lot of mistakes with you," Patricia began. "I let your father excuse your behavior because it was easier than fighting him. I told myself you were just going through a phase, that you'd grow out of it." "Mom," I said quiet. Her voice didn't rise, but it sharpened. "I watched that video, Derek. I watched you pour a drink on a boy half your size and laugh about it. And do you know what I saw?" Derek didn't answer. "I saw your father, 30 years ago, doing the same thing to someone who couldn't fight back." "That's what I saw. Dad's not. Your father is exactly who you think he is. He just hides it better. He's a bully in a nice suit. And I've spent 18 years making excuses for him, just like I've spent 16 years making excuses for you." She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the river. "I'm done making excuses. I'm filing for divorce. And I'm taking you with me." Derek stared at her. "You can't do that." "I can. I have a very good lawyer, and your father has been careless about covering his tracks." "But this isn't a discussion, Derek. This is me telling you what's happening. You have a choice to make. You can keep being the person you've been, which will land you in jail or worse by the time you're 25. Or you can let me help you become someone different." "I don't need help." Patricia turned to face him, and there were tears in her eyes. "Yes, you do. You need more help than I can probably give you. But I'm going to try. Because I'm your mother, and because somewhere under all that anger and cruelty, there's still a chance for you to be a decent human being." Derek felt something crack inside him. The armor he had built up over years of learning from his father's example. The protective layer of meanness that kept everyone at a distance. "Why now?" he asked, and his voice was smaller than it had been in years. "Because I saw that boy's face in the video. The one you poured the milkshake on, and I thought about what it must have taken for him to save up for that shake, what it cost him to have it taken away like that." She wiped her eyes. "And I realized that if I didn't do something, you would spend your whole life being the kind of person who takes things from people. And one day you would lose everything that matters, just like your father is about to." The divorce proceedings began 2 weeks later. Richard Lawson, blindsided by his wife's sudden spine, made the mistake of threatening her in writing. The texts were entered into evidence. His political career evaporated overnight. Derek watched his father's empire crumble and felt nothing but relief. On the other side of town, Marcus was finally starting to feel like himself. School had ended for the summer, but the anticipation of the coming year was different now. There was no dread, no counting down the days until the torture resumed. James had suggested he try something new, a summer program at the local community college for gifted students. Science and math, Marcus's favorite subjects, taught at a level that actually challenged him. But what about Derek? Marcus had asked. What about him? He knows where I go to school. He'll find out about the program. James sat down next to him on the porch steps. Marcus, you can't spend your whole life avoiding someone who might be mean to you. That's not living. That's hiding. I know, but let me ask you something. If Derek did show up, what would you do? Marcus thought about it. Really thought about it. I'd probably be scared, he admitted. Good. Fear is natural. Fear keeps us alive. What else? I'd stand my ground like you taught me. And if standing your ground didn't work, I'd get help. Find a teacher or an adult, James nodded approvingly. That's exactly right. You've got a plan now. A plan changes everything. You're not helpless anymore, Marcus. You haven't been helpless for a long time. Marcus enrolled in the summer program. He loved it. For the first time in his academic life, he was surrounded by people who thought the way he did, who got excited about equations and experiments and the pure joy of understanding how things worked. It was like finding a tribe he never knew existed. The campus was beautiful, all red brick buildings and spreading oak trees. The classrooms had actual lab equipment, not the broken-down stuff they had at Jefferson Middle School. The teachers treated students like people with working brains, not problems to be managed. He made friends, real friends, not just kids who tolerated him. Their names were Sophie, a girl with bright red hair and a passion for robotics, and Jalen, a quiet boy who knew more about coding than anyone Marcus had ever met. Sophie was loud and funny and never seemed to care what anyone thought of her. Jalen was quiet but observant, the kind of person who noticed everything and said little but meant every word. The three of them became inseparable. They worked on projects together, ate lunch together, and spent their breaks discussing everything from quantum physics to video games. Sophie was building a robot that could solve a Rubik's Cube. Jalen was designing an app that could translate sign language in real time. And Marcus was working on a solar-powered water purification system that could work in areas without electricity. For the first time in years, Marcus went to sleep excited about the next day instead of dreading it. One day, about 3 weeks into the program, Marcus saw a familiar face. Derek Lawson was standing outside the community college looking lost. His Letterman jacket was gone. His swagger was gone. He looked, Marcus thought, like a balloon that had lost all its air, like someone who had been holding himself up with anger and arrogance, and now that those were gone, there was nothing left. Marcus's first instinct was to hide, to avoid, to slip away before Derek noticed him. His heart started racing, the old familiar fear response kicking in. But then he thought about what James had said, about plans, about not being helpless, about becoming someone that your bullies could never become. He walked over instead. Derek! Derek looked up, and for a moment, fear flashed in his eyes, then recognition, then something like resignation. His shoulders slumped even further. Thompson, what are you doing here? Derek shrugged. Court-ordered community service, supposed to clean up the campus grounds or whatever. Part of my rehabilitation. He said the word with air quotes, but there was no energy behind it. Marcus looked at the cleaning supplies in Derek's hands, the orange vest marking him as community service, the trash bag already half full. I heard about your parents, he said. The divorce. Yeah, everyone's heard. It was on the news and everything. City council member's wife files for divorce. Cites pattern of abuse. Real, classy headline. There was an awkward silence. The kind that happens when two people who have been enemies suddenly find themselves without that enmity to structure their interaction. I'm sorry, Marcus said. About all of it. Derek stared at him. Why? I don't know. Because it seems like the right thing to say. After everything I did to you, you're sorry for me. Marcus thought about it, about the years of torment, the humiliation, the milkshake still sticky in his memory. I'm sorry for the person you might have been, he said finally, the one that got lost somewhere along the way. Derek was quiet for a long time. The sounds of the campus continued around them, students laughing, Cars passing, normal life happening to normal people. I was jealous of you, Derek said suddenly. That day in 6th grade. When you answered the question I couldn't answer. Jealous? My dad always said being smart was the only thing that mattered. That smart people ran the world and everyone else just worked for them. And there you were, this tiny kid with bad clothes and taped-up sneakers, and you were smarter than me. That's not... It's true. You've always been smarter than me. Everyone knew it. I just didn't know how to deal with that, except by making you feel small. Marcus didn't know what to say. Years of wondering why. And the answer was just jealousy. Just a father's cruel philosophy twisted into a son's cruelty. I'm working on it, Derek continued. The therapist my mum found. She says I have a lot of anger, that I learned it from my dad. That's good. That you're working on it. I wrote you a real letter, not the one my dad made me write, a real one. I was going to send it, but I didn't have your address. He pulled a crumpled envelope from his pocket and held it out. Marcus hesitated, then took it. You don't have to read it now, Derek said, or ever if you don't want to. I just wanted you to know that I know what I did was wrong. And I'm sorry, really sorry. Marcus tucked the envelope into his backpack. Thank you, he said, for the apology. Thank you for not running away. Most people do now. They stood there for another moment. Two boys who had been enemies and were now something else entirely. Not friends, maybe never friends, but no longer enemies either. I should get back, Marcus said. My class starts in 10 minutes. Yeah, I should get to work. Marcus turned to go, then stopped. Derek? Yeah? My mom says there's always a chance to be different, that it's never too late to change. Derek's face did something complicated. Your mom sounds smart. She is. She's the smartest person I know. Marcus walked away, toward his classroom and his friends and his future. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. Some chapters, he was learning, ended best when you simply closed them and moved on. The summer continued, hot and humid and full of possibility. James found a job at a local veterans center, helping other former military personnel navigate the same struggles he had faced. He was good at it, better than good. He had a way of connecting with people who had seen what he had seen, of speaking a language that civilians couldn't quite understand. Lisa watched him flourish and felt something she had thought was long dead stir in her chest. You're staring, Marcus said one evening, catching her watching James through the kitchen window as he fixed something on his truck. I am not. You definitely are. Lisa threw a dish towel at him, but she was smiling. Mind your business. You like him. He's a nice man. You like him. Lisa's cheeks flushed. When did you become such an expert on adult relationships? Sophie says I'm emotionally intelligent. It's a compliment. Sophie says, huh? Is this the same Sophie you've been texting every night for the past 3 weeks? Now it was Marcus's turn to blush. We're just friends. James came in through the back door, wiping his hands on a rag. What are you two gossiping about? Nothing, they said in unison, which made James raise an eyebrow. Sure, that's convincing. He grabbed a water bottle from the fridge. Lisa, can I talk to you for a minute, outside? Marcus caught his mother's eye and grinned. She made a face at him and followed James out to the porch. The evening was warm, the sky turning orange and pink as the sun began its descent. Lightning bugs were starting to emerge, their tiny lights blinking in the gathering dusk. A neighbor's lawnmower hummed in the distance. Children's laughter echoed from somewhere down the street. What's up? Lisa asked, trying to keep her voice casual. Her heart was already beating faster than it should have been. James leaned against the porch railing, and for a moment he looked almost nervous. Lisa had never seen him nervous before, not once in all the months he had been living with them. She had seen him face down 3 teenage boys without flinching. She had seen him deal with nightmares that left him sweating and shaking, but nervous, never. I've been thinking, he started, then stopped, started again. I've been thinking about a lot of things, actually. That sounds ominous. No, nothing bad, just important. He took a breath. The kind of breath you take before jumping out of a plane. When I moved in here, I told myself it was temporary, a place to stay while I got back on my feet. But somewhere along the way, temporary started feeling like something else. Lisa's heart rate picked up, though she tried not to show it. She had been feeling the same way for months, but hadn't dared to say anything. She had been hurt before. She had trusted before, and she had learned that trust was not something to be given lightly. Something else? James turned to face her fully. The fading sunlight caught his eyes, turning them from ice blue to something warmer. I look forward to coming home, not just to a house, but to this house, to you and Marcus and Destiny. I look forward to dinner conversations and movie nights, and arguing about whose turn it is to do dishes. It's always your turn. You lost the bet. James laughed. Fair. But my point is, this feels like more than just staying somewhere. This feels like belonging. Lisa felt tears prickling at her eyes. James, I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. I know you've been hurt before. I know trust doesn't come easy. I just want you to know that I'm not going anywhere, not unless you want me to. I don't want you to. The words came out before Lisa could stop them, before she could filter or analyze or protect herself. You don't? No, I don't. She stepped closer to him. James, before you came, this house was just a place we lived. It was fine. It was safe. But it wasn't really a home. You changed that. You gave Marcus a role model he desperately needed. You gave Destiny someone who takes her seriously. And you gave me, she trailed off, not sure how to finish. Gave you what? Hope. That maybe life could be more than just surviving. That maybe I could have a partner who actually shows up. James reached out and took her hand. I'm showing up, he said, every day. For as long as you'll have me. The kiss, when it came, was gentle, tentative, the first step in a new direction, taken carefully but without hesitation. From inside the house, Destiny's voice rang out. I knew it! Marcus, you owe me $5. Lisa broke away, laughing. How long have they been watching? Knowing those two? The whole time. The summer ended. School began again. Marcus walked into Jefferson High as a freshman, his head held high, his friends by his side. Derek Lawson was there too, but he wasn't the same person. He kept to himself, stayed out of trouble, and once, in the hallway, gave Marcus a small nod of acknowledgement. It wasn't friendship, but it was something. James and Lisa made their relationship official, to the delight of literally everyone who knew them. They took things slow, building on the foundation of friendship and mutual respect they had established over the summer. Marcus started dating Sophie, which consisted mostly of studying together and blushing whenever their hands accidentally touched. Destiny declared the whole thing gross, but also demanded to be the flower girl at their eventual wedding. And life, which had seemed so bleak that day in the mall, with chocolate milkshake dripping down his face, became something Marcus had never dared to hope for. Good. Simply, beautifully good. On the 1-year anniversary of what Marcus had come to call the milkshake incident, the Thompson-Mitchell family, because that's what they were now, sat down to dinner together. James had officially moved out of the garage and into the house. There had been a ceremony of sorts, Lisa insisting on marking the occasion with champagne for the adults and sparkling cider for the kids. Speech, Destiny demanded, banging her fork on the table. You want a speech? James asked. Yes, it's traditional. James stood holding his glass. Okay, a speech. He looked around the table at the faces that had become his world. 1 year ago, I walked into a mall food court and saw a kid getting bullied. I didn't know his name, didn't know anything about him. I just knew that I couldn't walk away. He met Marcus's eyes. What I didn't know was that kid was going to save my life just as much as I saved his. Marcus felt his throat tighten. I was lost, James continued. I had lost my wife, my career, my purpose. I was living in my truck and telling myself I was fine. And then I met Marcus, and through Marcus I met Lisa and Destiny, and suddenly I had something to wake up for again. He raised his glass. To family, the one you're born into and the one you choose. I choose this one. To family, everyone echoed, glasses clinking. Destiny immediately started asking about dessert, and the moment passed into something warm and ordinary. Dishes were cleared. Homework was discussed. Bedtime negotiations were had. Later that night, Marcus sat on the porch, looking up at the stars. James found him there and sat down beside him. "Big thoughts?" "Just thinking about how different everything is." "Good different or bad different?" Marcus smiled, remembering when he had asked James the same question a year ago. "Good. Definitely good." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. "Can I tell you something?" Marcus asked. "Always. When Derek poured that milkshake on me, I thought it was the worst moment of my life. I thought I would never get over it. And now I think it might have been the best thing that ever happened to me, because it led to you, to everything." James put his arm around Marcus's shoulders. "There's a saying we had in the teams, the only easy day was yesterday. It means that every day brings new challenges, new struggles, but it also means that every day is a chance to grow, to become stronger, to become more than you were. You think the hard stuff makes us better? I think the hard stuff shows us who we really are. The easy stuff anyone can handle. It's the hard stuff that separates the people who give up from the people who keep going." Marcus thought about that, about all the hard stuff he had been through, his father leaving, the bullying, the loneliness, and then about where he was now. His mother happy, his sister thriving, a man who treated him like a son, friends who understood him, a future that seemed full of possibility. "I'm glad I kept going," he said. "Me too, kid, me too." The stars continued their slow wheel overhead. The night sounds of the neighborhood hummed their familiar lullaby, and two people who had found each other in a moment of crisis sat together in peace, knowing that whatever came next, they wouldn't face it alone. That's the thing about life. It doesn't always give you what you expect. Sometimes it gives you something better, a stranger who becomes family, a bully who becomes a lesson, a moment of humiliation that becomes the first step towards something beautiful. Marcus Thompson had learned that the hard way, but he had learned it, and that made all the difference. 3 years later, Marcus stood at the podium of his high school graduation ceremony. He was the valedictorian, a distinction that had seemed impossible when he was 14 and covered in chocolate milkshake. The auditorium was packed. Lisa sat in the front row, tears already streaming down her face. James was next to her, wearing a suit for maybe the 5th time in his entire life. Destiny, now 12, was recording everything on her phone. Sophie was in the crowd somewhere, having graduated the day before from the county's specialized STEM academy. They were still together, 3 years and counting. Marcus looked out at the sea of faces and felt his heart pounding. "When I was asked to give this speech," he began, "I thought about all the traditional things I could say. Work hard, follow your dreams, never give up." A few chuckles from the audience. "But then I thought about my own journey, and I realized those platitudes don't really capture it. The truth is messier, more complicated, and more hopeful." He took a breath. 3 years ago, I was bullied, badly. I was small and smart and different, and those things made me a target. I spent years dreading school, dreading social situations, dreading my own existence. The auditorium was silent. And then, one day, everything changed. Not because I suddenly became stronger or cooler or less different, but because someone stepped in. Someone who didn't know me, who had no obligation to help me, who could have just walked away. He found James's eyes in the crowd. "That man is sitting in this room right now. He's my stepfather, and before that he was my friend, and before that he was a stranger in a mall food court who saw someone in trouble and refused to look the other way." Marcus felt his voice catch. "What I learned from him and from my mother and from everyone who has supported me along the way is this: we are not defined by the worst things that happen to us. We are defined by how we respond to them." He looked down at his notes, then pushed them aside. "I could have let that day in the mall break me. I almost did. But instead, I let it be the beginning of something new. A new chapter. A new story." He looked out at his classmates, many of whom had their own stories of struggle and survival. To my fellow graduates, life is going to knock you down. That's not pessimism, that's reality. You're going to face disappointments and failures and moments when everything seems impossible. A pause. But you're also going to find people who lift you up, who believe in you when you don't believe in yourself, who show you that you're stronger than you know. He smiled. Find those people. Be that person for someone else. That's my advice. That's my hope for all of us. The applause started slowly and built to a roar. Marcus saw his mother sobbing openly, James's arm around her. He saw Sophie jumping up and down in the back row. He saw Destiny filming and crying at the same time. And somewhere in the crowd, he saw another face he recognized. Derek Lawson. They had never become friends, but they had become something like cordial acquaintances. Derek had transferred to another school after his sophomore year, following his mother to a new town and a new start. But he had come back for graduation, for reasons Marcus could only guess. Their eyes met for just a moment. Derek nodded, a small gesture, an acknowledgement. Marcus nodded back. Then the moment passed, and the future rushed forward to meet them all. Marcus went to MIT on a full scholarship. He studied engineering and came back every summer to work with James at the Veterans Center, developing programs to help former soldiers transition to civilian life. Sophie went to Stanford, but they made the long-distance thing work. It wasn't easy, but nothing worth having ever was. Destiny grew into a teenager who was simultaneously the most annoying and most wonderful person Marcus knew. She wanted to be a doctor, like their mother. James and Lisa got married in a small ceremony in the backyard. The roses Lisa had planted years ago formed a natural arbor. Marcus was the best man. Destiny was the flower girl, as she had always demanded. And life continued as it does, with its challenges and its joys, its milkshakes and its strangers who turn out to be family. Marcus never forgot that day in the mall. Not the humiliation, not the fear, not the cold shock of chocolate sliding down his face, but mostly he remembered what came after. The moment when someone stepped forward and said, "That's enough." The moment when everything changed. The moment when Marcus Thompson learned that the worst days of your life can become the first pages of a beautiful story. All you have to do is keep reading. All you have to do is keep going. All you have to do is believe that somewhere out there, someone is waiting to step into your life and change everything. For Marcus, that someone was James Mitchell, a Navy SEAL with a broken heart and a truck full of memories, a man who couldn't walk away from someone in trouble, a stranger who became family. And that's how it ends. Not with revenge, not with violence, but with something much more powerful, with love, with family, with hope, with the knowledge that no matter how bad things get, there's always a chance for a different story. You just have to be brave enough to let someone write it with you. The milkshake dried, the video was forgotten, the bully faded into someone else's memory. But the family that formed from that moment of crisis, they lasted forever, and that's the only ending that matters. Marcus knows this now, as he tucks his own son into bed, telling him stories about a grandfather named James, who was once a Navy SEAL, and a grandmother named Lisa, who taught everyone that love was something you showed, not just something you said. "What happened to the bully?" his son asks every time. "He learned to be better," Marcus always answers. "It took a long time and it wasn't easy, but he learned." And the boy in the story, the one with the milkshake, he learned too. He learned that the worst moments can become the best beginnings. He learned that family isn't always about blood. He learned that one act of kindness can change everything. Is the story true? Marcus smiles, tucking the blanket around his son's shoulders. Every word. Do you think I'll ever meet a stranger who changes my life? Maybe. Or maybe you'll be the stranger who changes someone else's. His son thinks about that for a moment. I want to be like Great-Grandpa James. I want to help people. Then that's exactly what you'll do. Marcus turns off the light and closes the door, leaving just a crack for the hallway light to seep through. Outside, the Florida night is warm and humid, just like it always is. Palm trees sway in the breeze, lightning bugs blink their eternal code. And somewhere, in a mall food court or a school hallway or a crowded street, a stranger is about to step forward and change someone's life. Maybe yours, maybe mine, maybe the person you least expect. That's the thing about kindness. It ripples outward. It multiplies. It turns strangers into family and enemies into lessons, and worst days into first days. All it takes is one person willing to say, "That's enough." One person willing to step up. One person willing to be the stranger someone else needs. Be that person. Change someone's story, and let them change yours. The end. But also, of course, the beginning.